We're good.
25 minutes or so.
Yeah, there we go. Good, perfect. All right, let's do it. So, hi, my name's Ted McDonald, if you didn't already know that. And I am a yoga teacher and endurance athlete and coach. And this is my lovely yoga studio. Recently, I created a little platform called Conscious Endurance. You can always go to my website, teddymcdonald.com, and you can go to the community link, click it, it will pop over to Conscious Endurance, which is a platform of people who are living an active, or at least sharing tips and tricks on how to live an active, healthy 100 plus years. Because that's what we want to do ultimately, right? We don't want to get to 100 and just sort of be like, I made it here, but I'm old now and I'm creaky. And I don't want to be old and creaky when I get there. So I'm going to do everything that I possibly can and share that with you about how we can actually live a healthy, active, vibrant life as long as possible. So one thing is nutrition. I asked all the people in that little Conscious Endurance community what they wanted to hear about. Our first month was mindset and motivation, how to keep that going, how to get rid of that critic, or maybe not necessarily get rid of it, but how to deal with it, lots of other things. And this month is endurance training, because there's a few endurance athletes in there. So this particular week, today, right now, is going to be all about endurance nutrition. So my question to you is, we always start with a question, pose a question, rhetorically speaking or specifically speaking. Have you ever done a race where you bonked? Have you ever done a marathon, half marathon, 5K, half Ironman, Leadville, climbed a mountain and just all of a sudden gone whammo down? Or did you get stomach issues? Oftentimes during races, we have stomach issues that come up for us, and it's hard to figure out what's going on. Or have you been paying attention to the keto stuff and becoming a fat burner versus a sugar burner? So all these things we're gonna kind of go into a little bit. Well, for me, just a short little history of my endurance training. I ran my first marathon in the year 2000, so it's 2020 now, so it was 20 years ago. That was my first foray into endurance training and racing. And that particular race, one thing I was told was to make sure you drink at every water stop, because you're gonna bonk no matter what. And I don't know if that was told to me because I was just newer and inexperienced, but it was true. But I was told to make sure you hydrate, so make sure that you drink at every water stop. After that marathon, I got into triathlons, and then I got into adventure racing, and I've had a career of doing all kinds of fun, cool things, like racing all through these mountains here in Malibu, and all over this country, and riding my bike in other states and countries, and climbing mountains, and I love it. And I love the idea of pushing myself beyond what my mind thinks I can do, because the mind is very limiting. And if you can go, well, I don't know, there's part of me that maybe I can do it, but I don't know, maybe I can't climb that mountain. And then you got to set it up. And one of the things you have to set up is your nutrition. I remember an event that I did that was just total homegrown event. My one friend, Rami, and I ran the Inca Trail. So the Inca Trail down in Peru near Machu Picchu is a 4-day hike. And we got special permits to run it in 1 day. And it was all about the nutrition. I mean, we trained for it, because you're going to 14,000 feet and then back down, and then 13,000 feet and down again. But we just created this experience. Rami was like, maybe we could run the Inca Trail. And I thought, I don't know if you can do that. And even our guide was like, no, that's not a thing. And we totally did it and got permits, and it was an amazing 8-hour event. But how do you do that, right? We didn't stop. There was no stopping for lunch. We had to keep going. So we eat along the way. In the beginning of my adventure racing is long races, like 12-hour races, 24-hour races, 36, 48 hours, 3-5 days. I never really did a 3 to 5 day event, but I did day and a half. I think my biggest was like 36. It was 36. So it was a 24 to 48 hour that we finished around 36 hours, but of nonstop going. So how do you train for that? All right, well, when I used to train for those things, I would finish a training, 3-hour run or 4-hour bike ride or whatever, and I would go and I'd stop at the gas station and I would get like one of those. I'm so ashamed to even say this now, but I would get a quick pre-packaged tuna sandwich with chocolate milk, and because I bought into the whole chocolate milk theory, and potato chips, sour cream and onion potato chips, and that was my recovery meal. So I would have the carbs from the bread, and I would have the tuna, who knows where that tuna came from, and then I would have the chocolate milk, so I get some fat and some protein, also protein in the bread and the tuna. But then I would have as a salty snack those chips, and I just thought, it's fine. I'm getting my main sort of high-level macros, right? I'm getting my fat, I'm getting my protein, I'm getting some carbs, and I thought that was fine, and it was fine. I was also 30 at the time, and over time, what I realized, actually not that much time, but what I realized is food is my fuel. And I remember eating some chips thinking, this is definitely, because I just loved racing so much and I loved training so much, and I thought, this is not helping my racing and my training. This is what is called empty calories, and it's not doing anything for me. So I don't know why, it just shifted in my head, and I remember reading, I think it was in the Triathlete's Training Bible, if I'm not mistaken, an older book. I mean, that Joe Friel published a new book. That's great, and he's actually shifted his thinking in nutrition. But I remember the nutrition chapter, and it said, welcome to the world of eating whatever you want. I would go train all day, and I'd come back and I'd eat a whole quart of ice cream. I thought, wow, that's great. I love ice cream. I'll do that for sure. But what I realized over time is that stuff is not sustainable, right? There's no chance it's sustainable. And just a simple thing, if you take in 60 calories of soda, Coca-Cola, or Sprite or Mountain Dew, whatever, it's different than 60 calories from broccoli, right? Like that is the main. If you don't see how that is a different, it's not just calories in, calories out, and this is very important and when I say not just, it can be that, but it also needs to have, you need to have some superfoods, and you need to have some micronutrients inside your foods. You cannot just have this processed crap. I mean, you'll be able to go for a little while, but eventually it's not going to be sustainable. And I have another story where was my Leadville story. So some of you have heard part of this. Leadville is a very famous 100-mile run. If you ever read the book Born to Run, this is the race that they all go to. It's the Leadville 100 mile. I haven't done the 100-mile run yet, though I will once my kids are a little older. But I did do the 100-mile mountain bike race. And the 100-mile mountain bike race is all through the mountains up in the back of Aspen and in Leadville. Leadville is the town, and that's kind of behind Aspen in Colorado. And then it goes up and down all the way up and back. Essentially, it's an out and back race. And I did it in 2014 and 2015, so 5-6 years ago. And the first year I did it as a sugar burner. And that means I was preparing my foods, and I was using bars and gels and my hydration, and every 45 minutes I sort of had it timed, and I didn't want to get sick of anything. I didn't want it to affect my stomach. I wanted to really focus on the race, so I would change it up. I'd give myself 2 or 3 choices, and it was this whole sort of scientific plan about how to sustain my carbohydrate levels so that I could last I had no idea how long the race was going to take me. My goal was to get under 12 hours. That's the goal, where you get the big belt, the belt buckle, the finishing belt buckle. If you come under 9 hours, you get a bigger belt buckle. We're all suffering for hours and hours and hours for a belt buckle, but it's really worth it. I have 2 belt buckles now, not sub 9, but I'll get the sub 9. Anyway, so that was the year 2014, and my race took me about 10 and a half hours. So I did sub 12, got my belt buckle, super excited about it. Later that year, I did a whole bunch of blood tests. Actually, it was earlier that year that I did blood tests, in 2014, and I found out that I had some insulin resistance. So again, part of my struggle was looking at these lab results and saying, wow, if I keep going the way I'm going, insulin resistance, if you didn't know, is pre-diabetes. And if I continue to go down the road I was going, I would essentially get diabetes. And whether that was a year down the road or 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, my pancreas was unable to sustain my diet. So just for a general history or education about the pancreas. So you take food into your body, food or drink into your body, your pancreas secretes insulin to stabilize your blood sugar, because when you take food in, the blood sugar raises. Your body breaks it down, it becomes glucose mostly. And then the pancreas has to secrete insulin, which helps to stabilize that, because if your blood sugar is too high, you start to get shakes, you can't perform, you definitely can't race, you'll pass out. And then on the other side, so if you don't have enough insulin, which is why a lot of diabetics have, they have to shoot their own insulin. Pancreas just doesn't work, type 1 diabetics. So oftentimes you'll see people pass out because there's not enough insulin to stabilize that blood sugar. So I learned this, and then I thought, wow, I need to really look deeper into my diet, because prior to that it was, I'm an endurance athlete, whatever, I can do, I'll just burn it off. It's no big deal. Even if I cheat, I'll do, mostly kind of fish and eggs and, but otherwise vegetables. And so I was relatively healthy, but I would snack on chips and healthy chips, not really healthy, sugary drinks, lots of sport drinks. And I had to make a huge shift. Oatmeal, banana, mangoes, I would just eat it all. And I realized that I had to make a really significant shift, and I did that. And I cut out bananas, and I cut out oatmeal, and I cut out lots of different, I started having healthier fats. I cut out the higher carb stuff, and I went on a low carb, higher fat diet, and moderate protein. So protein kind of kept the same. We're not really going to go too much. You need protein to rebuild. If you do big, long stuff, longer endurance bouts of exercise, you're definitely going to need protein to help rebuild your body. But the fat and the carbs was what I was working with. And in my marathon training, as I was training and I was running 10, 12, 15, 16, 18 miles, a few times a week, then I would amp up my protein. But otherwise, you probably need like half of your body weight in grams, if that. But anyway, so I realized that I needed to shift my diet. And I started to do that, started to take out that stuff. And I read a great book called The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Performance. So that's specifically geared toward athletes. The same 2 doctors, Doctors Volek and Finney, wrote a book called The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living. And these guys are keto guys. They're very much on the keto side of things. They eat lots of meat and lots of butter and fats and all that sort of stuff. I don't eat meat. I eat fish and once in a while, not that much, and eggs sometimes. So for me, I had to figure out a different way. So I had healthier fats, lots of nuts, seeds, avocado, olive oil. Those are main staples in my diet that help me have a bit more fat. I lowered my carbohydrate intake, so I stopped doing chips. I started doing nuts instead. I stopped doing oatmeal and bananas, and I basically totally shifted my diet. And then I tested my blood again, and I watched the numbers go down. And then the other numbers go up. All right, so LDL and HDL. HDL, good cholesterol, should go a little higher. LDL, bad cholesterol, came a little bit lower. Triglycerides, a little lower. So these things were happening for me simply through diet. I've been exercising forever, but simply through the dietary changes, I started to shift. And essentially it was kind of from more of a macro standpoint. I mean, I have like I use Shakeology, so I use a superfood shake every day, so I get some of that stuff in there. But truth is, I don't know if that's working or not working, because I'm not testing those levels. And that's one point I want to make too in this short chat, because this can open up so many different avenues to go. But oftentimes when you read something, so I was just reading an article about low carb, high fat diets and how they don't improve your endurance. And while that might be true, I'm an example of someone who it did improve their endurance, but it's kind of a spun story. So 2014, I did Leadville, suffered my tail off on that mountain bike ride in elevation for 10 and a half hours. 2015, I came back. I was on a low carb diet. Instead of having every half an hour, 45 minutes, having goos or chews or this or that, I basically did nothing. I had a bar, like a Vega bar, that it took me 2 hours to eat. So there's 27 grams of carbs in there. I have about 10 grams of carbs per hour, which is not enough to sustain a serious exercise output. So my body was oxidizing fat and using fat as fuel. My breakfast was not a big oatmeal banana sandwich. My breakfast was eggs and avocado. And I finished that race in 9.5 hours. Now, I say it's a spun story because I had a new bike and I had experience. My training was about the same. But I believe that the later hours in that race, hour 6, 7, 8, 9, right? How do you feel? How do you feel at level 7, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9 of exercise, right? The Ironman, perfect example. When I did the Ironman, it took me 11.5 hours. The Ironman, I trusted by this time, and this was 2018, I was fully on a low carb diet. I knew what I needed to do, and I just tap off my carbohydrate tank, but I'm using fat as fuel to go there. Now, most of us are not professional athletes. I'm not a professional athlete. If I was a professional athlete, I'd be doing an Ironman in sub 8 hours, just to get your, right? Professional athletes that do Leadville are sub 6, well, 6.5 hours, right? So they're 2-3 hours ahead of me. I'm an old guy. I just go out for fun and push myself, right? But the point is essentially that we have to take all this information and we have to do what's right for us, because we are an experiment of one. And everybody processes differently. There was a study done in Israel that tried to prove whether or not Palestinians process carbohydrates different from Israelis. And what they learned in this study is that every single individual processes carbohydrates differently, period. And that's true based on stress, diet, sleep, how you process. Like there's an infinite, your climate, where you live. There's an infinite amount of different things that can affect how your body processes all this stuff. Training, so for me, the weather could have been cooler in 2015 and just then 2014 back to Leadville. And if it was just 10 or 15 degrees cooler, you're gonna go way faster, right? So to latch on to a study and go, this is it, this is the deal. Look here, the study says, I'm going. That makes no sense whatsoever. So you have to really find out for you and see how it is that you perform at these different levels, right? So one thing is that while this particular article I was reading in Outside Online said that low carb, high fat diets don't improve your endurance, for me, it did. And I think it did because I was less stressed about what I needed to eat in the later hours of the day. I knew that I was having half a bar max, or a little gel max, or in the Ironman, a couple of pretzels. And I knew that that was going to be enough sodium and some carbs to kind of tap it off, but I knew my fat tank was going to keep me sustained for the whole entire race. There's no chance. So just for round numbers quickly, your carbohydrate tank is about 2,000 calories, 2,500 calories every person. Your fat tank is on an elite athlete, 30 to 40,000 calories of fat in their body. So if you can oxidize that fat as fuel, then you don't need to take anything in, but you have to train your body to do that. What I did, it takes 3 to 4 weeks, and you have to go low carb, possibly keto for a little while. And what I did is I used to go for this 2-hour run on a weekly basis. And that run essentially was, first I did it with a banana and oatmeal, and then I go for my run. Then I said, okay, I got to take out my banana and my oatmeal. And then I had some tea. And then after I would have the tea and I'd go out, I'd bring a gel with me. And then after that, I would take out the gel, and I almost passed out toward the end of the actual run. But I was training my body to do it. And over time, the fourth or fifth week or whatever, I went for a 15-mile run with basically, or 13-mile run, I think, with some green tea. That was it. And I felt fine. And it's unbelievable when you train your body to do that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's possible to find what works for you. It's imperative, if you're an athlete, to find what works for you nutritionally speaking. So the sugar burner versus fat burner, in my opinion, as an endurance athlete, if you can get into the fat burning, it doesn't mean you need to be keto, but you can get into the fat burning, which in my opinion is less spikes, less up and down, less like, oh, I have fuel in my body, I just had a bar and I'm depleted. You avoid the depletion. There's a constant level of energy, your body's oxidizing. So that's my solution for you. So remember, food is fuel. So make sure that when you start taking it, and this is not only for athletes. This is just life in general. Remember that what you take into your body is your fuel that you live. So do you want to take in crappy fuel, or do you want to take in high octane fuel, right? And then the other thing is that it's really important to understand that your food is not only your fuel, but also your recovery too. So you can have anti-inflammatory foods as well. And this is a high level sort of chat quickly about nutrition. The next month in September, we're going to talk about nutrition every single week. So you can definitely studies are going to tell you all kinds of different things. The most important thing is that you are an exercise of one. You are an experiment of one. And so until you start experimenting and go, I just ran 10 miles, and normally I have 2 gels and 4 bars and a shake before and 9 shakes, you're not going to know. So unless you really do specific experiments, all these different studies that you read really are useless until you figure it out for yourself. Anyway, that's my chat for today, and feel free to ask questions. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also go to my website, teddymcdonald.com, sign up for the newsletter, click on that community link, and join us in Conscious Endurance, where we'll be sharing more and more stuff all about living a happy, healthy 100+ years. Thanks so much, you guys, and we'll see you next week for more in endurance training, which is probably going to be later. It's going to be all about cross-training and how your strength in cross-training will help you in the later hours. So thanks so much, you guys.